Hi everybody, and welcome to another video. And to those of you that have recently subscribed, thank you very much. It's very much appreciated, every one of you. We're now at 63 subscribers on the channel. Just remember, if you watch the videos, if you could give us a like as well, that would very much be appreciated, and it helps just boost us up a little bit, and hopefully more people will find us. Anyway, in this video, I'm going to talk about a decision I made recently regarding photography, but also related to the health challenges which are becoming increasingly more difficult to cope with, let's put it that way. Fibro has always been challenging, but I had got on top of that over sort of 5 or so years since it brought me grinding to a halt in 2019. However, with the stenosis, the foraminal stenosis in my spine, it really is ramping up. And I don't think I've described what that is in a previous video. If I have, apologies, I'm going to describe it again. Basically, it's a lot easier to describe than fibromyalgia. Where the nerves come out of my spinal column, they are being impacted in the whole of my lower spine, my lumbar spine, and the whole of my neck, all of my neck joints, by the bones. So there's pressure permanently being put on them. I have better days, and I have some really challenging days. I have days where I have to walk with my walking stick, days where I can just about cope with it, but then the impact is balance, cognitive function and everything else. There is a big question on that with regards to the bigger picture and fibromyalgia of how much is this or has this been causing my fibro. And I'm now waiting to see a spinal surgeon to see my notes from the MRI scan to see if they want to see me. Oh, I've got my fingers crossed. And discuss any potential interventions, whether that's injections or surgical. I don't want unnecessary surgical interventions, but if he says this will help alleviate some of the challenges, especially the fact that I am having trouble coordinating my legs sometimes. There's constant weakness and fatigue in my legs that was there before when I thought it was just fibro. But this obviously was sort of laying a bit more not dormant, but it wasn't as impactful on my function until March 2025, when it started really ramping up. So feeling like your legs are always going to buckle and collapse, it's not a great thing. So I've got my fingers crossed that the spinal surgeon at least will have a conversation with me, if nothing else. Anyway, back to photography. It does all connect, I promise. I'm no script today, I'm just going on the fly. Just set everything up and going for it. I'm having to think about, and I've said this in previous videos where I've been using my phone to do some street photography because it's the camera I always have with me. My Canon 40D DSLR semi-pro model is too heavy to stick in your bag all the time and take around. It's quite chunky. I haven't got it out here. But I do like the camera. I love having a camera to hold. I'm having this conversation with a friend the other day, that was using their phone to take pictures, and it doesn't feel as intuitive when you've been used to holding a camera, a solid camera in your hands. However, I do want to use my camera to create images. So it got me thinking, and I'd been thinking about this for a while, really. Some of you will be familiar with the fact that I had, and I use that phrase, I had a Rokinon 8mm fisheye lens, which was great for creativity. I've recently been using it to do some extreme wide angle street photography. For example, the Snoopy Trail. So if you go back around December time, when I posted, or I think it might be January, when I posted the Snoopy Trail video, the second trip I did with my wife, I just took the fisheye lens and got the crowds around this Snoopy Trail, and I quite like that. However, with that lens, it will bend everything, and I did like the curves, especially for woodland scenes, etc., bringing in the tops of the trees, that nice curved shape. However, one phrase that came into my mind, I don't know why, was sort of, I want to grow up a little bit. It's great when you're 55 saying you want to grow up. And I wanted something which was going to give me ultra wide angle, but not bringing all those challenges with the curves, the horizons, the verticals, etc. So I made the decision, and once I'd made this decision in my mind, I knew it was the thing to do because I could think of nothing else. It was like, no, bang, that's the decision I'm going to make. So I went onto mpb.com, where a lot of most of my hardware is from, excluding my 50mm prime lens. And it's where we've bought all of my son's kit over the years, had no problems whatsoever, so a very trusted resource. And out of curiosity, I wondered what I would get for the fisheye lens, which was still in excellent condition. Thankfully, they agreed, if I traded it for a different ultra-wide lens. Another reason for that is the weight of it. It was 485 grams, I think, or around that figure. I've got a picture of it somewhere. If I have, I'll put it up on the screen. And on the front of the 40D is quite weighty in itself, which I can feel pulling on my spine as I'm holding it in my hand and carrying it in my sling bag, which quite often I'm doing on my side. I can feel that pulling. So, and the fisheye lens on front of that meant that there was extra weight tipping the camera forward, especially when you're dealing with fatigue in your arms, your legs, you're walking, etc. You can feel this in your hand, sort of pulling forward, and it was quite a wide lens at the front. So if I was going to take that, there's very little else I could put in my bag. So I wanted to get something more compact. I wanted something that still gave me an extreme or an ultra wide angle. So I asked MPB what I would get for the fisheye lens if I was to trade it for the Canon 10 to 18mm. Now I did look at the 10 to 22, but as I have an 18 to 55mm lens, referred to often as a kit lens, I didn't really need to go that extreme, and that was a lot heavier than the 10 to 18. I got £99 trade-in for the fisheye lens and paid £119 for this, so not bad. I only had to pay £20 difference and I got free delivery. So I now have in my arsenal the Canon 10 to 18mm, and it's actually the first lens I've got ever with image stabilization. I don't know if the camera's focusing on that. I think it's focusing on me, but it has image stabilization, so that will help a little bit. It is f4, I believe, hasn't got it written on there, to f5.6. Let's have a look. F4.5 to 5.6, so it's a variable aperture, so it won't stay wide open if I zoom in. But that gives me equivalent of a 16 to 28. So if I'm walking around, for example, my trips to London, and I want to do some wider cityscapes or building shots with the ultra wide at the equivalent of 16mm, the 10mm setting on here, I can then easily zoom in to the 18mm setting, 28mm equivalent on my crop sensor, and do some wide angle street photography, people on the street. I won't have to keep changing lenses. And as I said in a previous video about using my 18 to 55 and realizing that at 18mm I've got 28mm, which is a frequently used focal length by other photographers for street photography, then this overlapping with my 18 to 55 will give me what I need, really, and they both fit nicely in my sling bag and can take them both with me. So if I wanted to be able to zoom in a bit more, then I can overlap with my 18 to 55. The 10 to 18 is half the weight of the fisheye lens, and it's much more compact, much narrower here. There's practically no weight compared to the fisheye lens there. It's not going to be feeling like it's tipping forward. And when you compare it to my 18 to 55, in terms of size, there's not much in it at all. The 10 to 18, a little bit wider because of that ultra wide angle at the front, so my filters don't fit, but I'm tending not to put filters on my lenses at the moment with what I'm shooting and the style I'm shooting, so that's not an issue. But but yeah, they feel like they weigh pretty much the same. I don't know what the weight of the 18 to 55 is, but there's not much in it. So, as you would guess, I have been out and about using the 10 to 18 to get some practice and just get used to the lens. I obviously, having done photography for, well, about 2010, so 15, 16 years now with a DSLR. Buying this, I knew what I wanted to create with it. Having had the fisheye lens and the ultra-wide setting on my phone has helped get my eye in the training in to think about the types of shots I can create with that sort of focal range. So I have been out practicing, and what I'm going to share with you in this video is a walk that my friend Clive and I had already organised before I got this lens to go up to the Peace Pagoda. You can see it on the screen behind me here. There's a Peace Pagoda in Willen Park in Milton Keynes, which is just up the road from us here. I've been there before, and as somebody who is interested in and tries to practice and use some of the Buddhist philosophy to help me cope with fibro, but also life in general, and it is very useful to me. It's somewhere that I do like to visit and just chill out for a little while and just reflect on things. We didn't know this obviously when we planned it, but it actually was the warmest day that we've had so far this year. So it was a beautiful day, like summer had finally arrived, even though we're still in spring. Very warm, clear blue sky day, and you know what, we both thought that this didn't matter for the images. I have to shoot whenever I can. In terms of my function, it's not possible to get out too early in the morning because of needing to stretch and get myself into the day and get my function going. End of the day, my function is tailing off and worsening. So the blue sky, we think actually with the gold statue, with the white of the pagoda, really made the day, to be perfectly honest. So looking for different frames and that sort of thing. Anyway, we'll get into the footage and the images, and I'll talk you through some of those. We started at the pagoda. We then went along to the prayer tree, the One World tree I believe it's called, donated by the council to go with the pagoda, where people hang ribbons on the tree with prayers on them for loved ones that have passed. And then we took a little wander down the hill from there to the Buddhist Temple nearby. With ultra-wide lenses, as well as the verticals leaning in slightly at the edges because of the ultra-wide angle that you're shooting and the slight distortion of the lens, they can also make taller objects in your images look like they're leaning backwards. What I'm going to show you here is the original image straight out of camera, and this is one of my favourite images of the pagoda from the day. Just the composition itself works for me. However, what I wanted to do was to bring the top of the pagoda forward a little bit, so that needed some vertical adjustment. And as you can see in this final image from the edit, it looks a bit straighter, it looks a bit sort of like it's going straight up in front of us. There's still a slight lean, but that I'm not too concerned about. You will also notice that from doing the adjustment, it crops the image slightly because you're going to lose some of the edges. And this again is where the ultra-wide lens pays off, because you've got more than enough in your shot, and this is shot at the 10mm setting, so 16mm equivalent. And by cropping it, I've still got plenty there. And I think actually the sort of square-ish crop, it's not quite exactly a square, but the square-ish crop here definitely sets off that image. And with the blue sky behind the gold and the white, I'm really happy with that image. This is another example where vertical perspective adjustment has helped bring the image back in. So here's the final edit, and here's the original image, and I've used vertical adjustment just to bring because the pagoda is not central in the image, I've needed to try and straighten that up a little bit with vertical adjustment. Again, it's cropped the image a little bit. Let's go back to the final edit, but you can see that has straightened that up nicely, and it also gives a sense of scale with that ultra wide view. You see my friend Clive there and some other people in the image, and that really gives a sense of scale of what it feels like to be next to the pagoda. Having ultra wide also means that I can bring some more foreground interest into an image, as well as getting more of height in the image as well. So I noticed some daisies on the grass as we were walking up to the prayer tree, so I turned around and wanted to compose this shot. Now, I don't have focus stacking in camera where it would make everything clear in the image, crystal clear from front to back. However, I quite like this shallower depth of field. You've got a hint of the daisies in the foreground here, but obviously our main subject in the image is the pagoda, but we've got these daisies in the foreground and dandelions adding a bit of colour and interest through the grass as we head up, and it just leads a line, gives you a leading line up to the centre of the pagoda. With this image, I was looking for something to try and frame the pagoda from a different angle. We're behind it now. And the only thing that was there were some young trees in blossom, and there was just one branch that was hanging down. It would have been nice to have something that kind of framed it all around the pagoda, if I could have looked through to the pagoda through a few branches with blossom on. But that wasn't an option. So what I've done here is used it coming down the left-hand side of the image. This is a f5.6 aperture, so you can see the shallower depth of field. So we can tell that's blossom here, but it's not sharply in focus. It draws our eye in, and it just takes away from sort of having too many images where it's just clear blue sky and nothing else, and it just adds an element of interest. Let me know what you think in the comments. This is another example of straightening the centre, because the centre of the pagoda, because it's not central in the image. Wanted to include that sense of scale with these people. So again, by using the vertical adjustment, it's brought a crop into a square crop. But again, I think that works nicely. Something to think about with your images is the final crop. You don't always need to stick with whatever your camera provides, whether that's 4:3 or in my case 3:2. And when you've got days like this where there's no feature in the sky, sometimes it's quite nice to think about a panoramic crop. This is a 65:24 X-Pan crop, and this has had vertical adjustment because again the Peace Pagoda is not central in the image, so I had to straighten that slightly. So it was going to be cropped anyway from doing that adjustment. Putting the 65:24 gives us that focus, but also we've got a leading line of the path that leads to and from the pagoda down to the lake, and plus we've got some people dotted along that path, which adds a bit of interest in my opinion. So we then headed up to the One World tree, as I refer to it, the prayer tree. And this is where people leave their dedications, ribbons and cards, that sort of thing, tied to the tree. They'll stay there for forever, or as long as they cling on to the tree, in remembrance of their loved ones. And it is a very nice place to sit and chill out The atmosphere around the pagoda, the tree and the temple is just amazing. And for somebody like myself who reads and is interested in how the Buddhist philosophy can help us just cope with life, whatever it throws at us, fibro, stenosis, life in general, it's a great place just to sit, chill. And in this case, Clive and I were just sharing life stories, and it was a really lovely time. I also wanted to try and capture some images, some detail, and see what the 10-18 lens would provide with the prayer flags and dedications on the tree. And I'm really happy with what the images are, how they've come out, and I'm really happy with this lens. I don't think it's one that I'll be parting company with anytime soon. Here you can see the temple nestled down in the valley here from the hill up where the tree is based, and I can't pronounce the name of it. I'm going to put it on the screen for you now. It is a temple where you can go in if it's open. Unfortunately, it wasn't open on this day. This image shooting through the pink blossom on the tree back towards the temple is an example of what I'd like to have been able to do at the Peace Pagoda that I was describing earlier. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please give us a like, and if you haven't subscribed, subscription always helps to raise the profile of the channel. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video.